Okay, so welcome to the Digital Economy Lab Lunch Seminar. I'm Eric Brynjolfsson, and today's speaker is Eric Horvitz. Eric is Microsoft's Chief Scientific Officer, where he spearheads the company-wide initiatives, navigating opportunities and challenges in the confluence of scientific frontiers, technology, society, including their strategic efforts in AI, medicine, and the biosciences. He's made major contributions to AI theory and practice, focusing on applications uh, in the midst of this complex open world. He got both his PhD and MD here from Stanford, and before he was chief scientific officer, he was the director of Microsoft Research. We welcome questions during the seminar. He's going to leave about 10 minutes for general questions. If you're here, just raise your hand. We'll get a mic over to you. If you're online, please use the Q&A function there at the bottom of your Zoom screen. So Eric, welcome to Stanford.
Thank
Tell us
you.
about the foothills of an AI era in science.
Thanks so much. Well, good afternoon. It's an honor to join you here at the Digital Economy Lab Seminar. And so I thought I would share some reflections with you today about how AI is really beginning to reshape science itself. Some of today's thoughts and slides are adapted from my AAAS Gilbert Omen lecture just a few months ago. I thought I'd like to start with getting on the same page about AI. I view AI as the study of computational mechanisms underlying thought and intelligent behavior. In a document that kicked off the modern study of AI, the founders of the field said they were trying to find how to make machines solve the kinds of problems now reserved for humans. This was in a bold proposal for funding a workshop in 1956. With that beautiful document, I tell people it could be funded today if it was submitted to NSF or DARPA. The founders kicked off a new phase of seeking to understand the mysteries of intelligence. There have been other phases, of course, across the centuries. And so over the past 20 years, we've seen capabilities accelerate quite rapidly. I believe that AI will be recognized historically as a key socio-technical leap for humanity, alongside milestones like steam power, electricity, the telephone, and flight. In fact, I tend to say that I suspect that 500 years from now, historians will view the next 50 to 100 years as a critically important era for the influence of technology on people's society. And I think that the era will have a name. I'm not sure what it'll be called just yet. So it's still early days, but I believe the impact of AI on the scientific method and across physical and biological sciences and others may be the most profound shifts we witness coming through the advances in AI. We're already seeing interesting and shared methods and pipelines I'll get into today being developed across multiple scientific disciplines and challenge problems. And while we have ongoing work to do on responsibility and rough edges, I'm overall confident that, or I should say optimistic about the possibilities ahead for harnessing AI to make progress on long-term opportunity areas, addressing long-standing grand challenges in such realms as health and life sciences, material sciences, agriculture, sustainability and climate science, getting into the behavioral sciences, education, and so on. So I thought I'd start by recapping some recent history and key trends that we're seeing with neural network models. About 15 years ago, we hit an inflection point in AI. We've been riding on top of a fast-moving wave of innovation with the deep neural network models since then. That wave has included reaching parity with humans on a number of challenging benchmarks in visual and language tasks. A little over a decade ago, we started seeing the power of these neural models for applications like image-based diagnosis in medicine, spanning dermatology and radiology, running at expert levels for these tasks. But over the last 4 years, that probably brings some of you here with the excitement, we've been riding on yet another acceleration that I see as an inflection upon an inflection with the qualitative and quantitative capabilities we're now seeing with generative AI that are showing unexpected powers of generation, synthesis, and composition. In one of the first examples that got us very excited at Microsoft, the powers of, I think it was GPT 3.5, were showing us what you can do in computer programming. And of course, it's one of the earliest commercial successes of generative AI was the GitHub Copilot, which continues to generate guesses of the next portions of program code that a software engineer might find useful. We were amazed by the power of these methods. Today, these programming tools are delivering great value to millions of software engineers. But that was early on in the generative AI boom. And since then, or since the time of GitHub Copilot, there have been a rapid set of advancements and trends with the technology. I thought I'd just mention a few trends before getting into the sciences. The first trend has been the power seen with the increasing scale of computing data. There's been a lot of excitement about what comes with scale. And I like showing this data center west of Des Moines, Iowa, where GPT-4 was birthed, I should say, a few years back. This data center is now small by today's standards.
How is it powered?
With electricity.
No, I mean, yeah, how it does.
Typically, we can get into sustainability later in terms of how that works, but typically when we put in data centers, we think deeply about the stress on local grids, make arrangements to generate new power with sustainable sources as well as other sources, peak power plants and so on. Sometimes it leads to negotiations with cities where we will power the city as part of putting in the data center, in terms of building new capacity. So studies have demonstrated that we see with scale in data and compute, the unexpected rise of capabilities in language, mathematics, and programming tasks. We often refer to this, and this can be a debate, but the emergence of surprising abilities like learning to solve a new task from a handful of examples in a single interaction. More generally, the rise of capabilities of abstraction and generalization. Back in August of 2022, my team was one of the earliest groups to get access to GPT-4, and we did a safety study as well as a scientific capability study for both OpenAI and Microsoft at the time. Two words came to my mind during these studies. One was, we're seeing a phase transition from the last version of the model, which was 3.5, and polymathic in terms of the ability of these models to do tasks, to perform generations that would span disciplinarities. We were surprised by the general purpose powers, for example, showing the ability to write a proof of the infinitude of primes as a poem, or to write a computer program in response to a prompt without any specialized training. The scrolling window here. I like this picture, which came out of a paper called Sparks of Artificial General Intelligence, because we were so impressed by the ability to basically compose long prompts for the day, like asking a model to perform a set of complex visual tasks. These were all animations that were created. And so much is being done now with these and other large generative models, but even deeper impact is on the horizon. Now, I was talking about generalization before. I was also excited about the see beyond the impressive powers of generalization and abstraction, specialization. I've been excited about the ability of the model to, for example, solve hard challenge problems in medicine, given my background in training. We early on looked at challenge problems coming out of the New England Journal of Medicine that are considered very hard CPC cases or challenge problems. And seeing these models just generate surprising responses on diagnostic inference, as well as next best tests and so on, as well as the mastery of these models on solving key medical competency exams, including exams taken to certify physicians to practice medicine. You can read about this work online. Another trend is all the work that's gone on in the last 2 years or so, 2.5 years, almost 3 now, on prompt innovation or prompt engineering. This shows you an example of a prompt cascade we call MedPrompt, that shows by doing a certain set of tasks to identify automatically what examples to use, for example, and how to shuffle and do ensembles and combine the answers to ensembling. You could do better than custom-tailored models for healthcare think at the time this was MedPalm from Google. And by using a generalist model, GPT-4, you can see we can just, with the right kind of prompting, we could tune or squeeze specialty or specialist reasoning out of that model. Another trend has been in multimodal models, and these are beyond language-centric. We have these on our phones now, for example. The idea of inference procedures that bring together and learning algorithms multiple types of information with a focus on imagery and language. This can play, of course, an important role in many areas of science and medicine. As an example, I have up here is the work on a project called GigaPath, published last year in Nature. The project centered on training a multimodal model with over 150,000 pathology slides, along for each one, genomic information, cancer staging information, and other detailed information. So when you actually use this model, you show it to a visual analyzer under a microscope, for example, a slide, and it can also make inferences about cancer subtyping, mutation prediction, and so on when analyzing new pathology slides. And then another trend is test time reasoning and capabilities, because this is one of the hottest areas right now. It's giving models new capabilities. You've seen it in the tech press and other places, in your own hands. With this work, the power of models has been greatly extended by training them to think, to do meta-reasoning. That was the focus of my doctoral work, actually. Meta-reasoning under time constraints, to reason how to solve a problem. So now these models can learn how to solve hard mathematics problems. On the left, you see the power of the O1 model, capabilities on challenging math problems as a function of training time. And on the right is what test time training for a fixed size model of fixed training is doing with more compute going into chain of thought optimization and reasoning in real time.
So Eric, actually, can I ask a quick
Sure,
question?
go ahead, yeah.
To go back one. So the O1 model, wasn't it trained on to a certain amount, or how come there's so many different points there for the O1 model on the training time? Like, wasn't there a particular run to train O1, or did you train it multiple times?
This shows for different stages of training it on the way to the final O1 that was shipped.
Oh, okay, so the one that was final one was shipped was the far right one,
Yes.
and then you tested it along the way. And
Yes.
It's been
Well, this wasn't my work. This was the OpenAI work.
Okay, that's what
right.
it is.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was a good
So
question.
eventually,
though.
guys said, okay.
Yes. And what's kind of nice for computer science researchers is that different methods are being explored to learn how to to learn with feedback and training, how to do real-time reasoning with these systems, given those skills. It really harkens back to meta-reasoning research, search that went on in the good old-fashioned AI days in the 1980s and early 90s. And to give you a sense for the power of test time reasoning in the medical domain, recently I joined with some colleagues at Harvard and Stanford to do a deep dive across new sets of clinically oriented challenge problems with the O1 model when it came out. You can actually find our paper with a kind of an interesting title, Superhuman Performance on the Reasoning Tasks of a Physician. But here's one example of the O1, when we first did this work, O1 preview, on particularly hard medical challenges used in medical education and testing, named the NEJM healer cases. These are actually very hard cases. If you see here, O1 preview got 78 out of 80 perfect scores on this exam. GPT-4 got 47 out of 80, and this is largely with the test time ability, the test time inference abilities.
Just a quick clarification, Eric. What is test time reasoning? For those of us who don't know what test time
sorry, yeah. So in the pre-test time reasoning days, I don't know, 8 months ago, things move very quickly these days.
Oh, I'm feeling less bad that I don't know.
Right. The models would generate stochastically sequences of tokens that we see as text or images. And that was all kind of fixed in terms of the models did their thing. With test time, the models are trained to actually start to generating partial results or steps. Like, how would I solve this problem? Let me see. I would first do X, then do X1, then X2, and they learn how to write out a sequence of what the subtask should be. the whole model then considers this in the context of the model before generating its final answer. So that's why there's often a delay. As if you use these latest models, they'll be chattering to themselves, and some UX user interfaces will actually display some of the chatter. You can slow it down, you get a log. You can complain about it. You say it's really interesting that in solving this medical model, isn't it quaint to see the model saying, but wait, no, let me go back again. Let me go forward again. But what's interesting about the powers coming from that kind of capability now, which in some ways are quite surprising, we have neural models now solving classic NP-hard / NP-complete, depending how you look at it, satisfiability and optimization problems like traveling salesman problem. We just published these 2 new benchmarks from our team in a paper entitled Where We Stand and What Lies Ahead. But it's really interesting now. In that paper, we talk about how here, GPT-4o versus other O3 Mini, for example, how well it does on traveling salesman problems of increasing difficulties. We're characterizing these systems to solve really hardcore optimization and planning problems. And then putting that all together, you get a trend to a shifting Pareto frontier. And what you see here is from the lower right to the upper left, 3 curves representing sets of models that I would loosely say were 2023 at the right, in the middle, 2024 technologies, and 2025 now. At the bottom is the total cost. Notice it's a log score. And up on the right is the performance on a very hard medical challenge called, the set of challenges called MedQA. And then finally, a trend that I think is very interesting is we're seeing strong work now in multi-agent frameworks, referred to as agentic AI. These allow scientists and engineers to build more sophisticated problem solvers by defining sets of independent specialists or agents. They can even be the same model, different models being called, prompted differently, and then orchestrating these agents into larger multi-step planners and solvers. And so with these agentic systems, one or more AI models take on distinct roles. They acting as specialized agents with different expertise, different access to special tools, defined responsibilities, who has access to that private data, for example, that they can't share directly but can share statistics about. And these agents can collaborate, communicate, and divide work up intelligently. So let me turn now to the possibilities for harnessing the rising powers you heard about just now of AI to help to solve these grand challenges in the realm of scientific discovery. So AI is truly in the early days, and I'll check back with me and yourselves, it's like 5 or 6 years from now. It's the early days of helping scientists with modeling and reasoning and with performing scientific discovery at multiple spatial and temporal scales. So neural models are now across organizations under development for spatial scales or inferences about phenomena at spatial scales, ranging from atoms to compounds, from gene expression and protein interactions to cellular networks, from cells to human physiology, from individuals to populations. And it's really interesting to see across the fields, distinct scientific fields, patterns of analysis and pipelines that are emerging in uses of AI methods in the sciences that show promise for helping to supercharge some of the core components of discovery. So AI methods are helping to generate and identify large numbers of candidates that we couldn't do ourselves manually. They also can be used to then hone down those candidates into sets of the most likely or the most promising ones. They've been used to accelerate or enhance simulations. They're analyzing types of data, helping data scientists with large-scale data sets like particle physics data sets. They're bridging the world of computation, or in silico, with real-world phenomena, with experimentation, for example. And they're providing new kinds of insights and machinery about how things are working. So I want to give you a couple of examples today that I think highlight what I see as patterns and pipelines that are becoming almost canonical across fields. one example comes from material science. This is the area of science and technology that provides us with novel substances and materials. You know, materials are really central in our lives. To highlight the centrality of materials, we've even used the names of materials, if you think about it, to label the level of advancement of human civilization over thousands of years. Stone Age, the Bronze Age, the Iron Age, and so on. And it's really exciting that recently AI methods have come to be used to help find new materials, particularly to help material scientists to cut through large combinatorial search spaces of possibilities to identify promising candidate materials. So I think we're on the path to achieving breakthroughs in the material sciences, including some global challenges of finding new ways to store energy available from intermittent sources, to find new catalysts, including those that could actually take carbon out of the atmosphere. There's a long pursued dream we may see cracked in our lifetimes of room temperature superconductivity. It's feasible. We haven't discovered how to do that just yet. These would be several of these would be absolutely game-changing for humanity. So stepping back, I'm so proud that my only animation is this. The properties of materials are largely defined by complex interactions among electron shells of molecules. The best understandings we have of electron locations in interactions in substances comes via Schrodinger's equation, and that dictates the probability distribution, the probabilities of positions of electrons in materials. Now, solving Schrodinger's equation is exponential in the number of electrons, which makes its direct use untenable as a tool for searching through massive numbers of possibilities, for example, to identify new materials. However, approximate methods have been developed that are more efficient but still challenging to compute and use. People may have heard of DFT, for example. Recently, AI models have been built to serve as what I would call Schrodinger simulators of sorts. They're trained via more complex classic computations on samples, and they're expensive to build because you have to compute the data. The data sets are synthetic in that you're computing them. But once you build a model, you can use these models to start estimating required computations about Schrodinger's equation and its approximations to make predictions thousands of times faster than the base level computations that you would need with classical methods. So these neural models that are being built, the neural approximation models, are made even more powerful when you don't just start with raw data, but you take laws of physics. We, in machine learning, call these priors about knowledge. Laws of physics, foundational principles, including what's called invariance and equivariance, represented by this little graph down, the colorful graph here. And we then use such models in end-to-end scientific discovery pipelines and workflows. So scientific communities right now are learning about how to build and use these pipelines. In the material sciences, training and inference workflows are being used to generate and then evaluate really vast pools of promising candidates. Now, more generally, you'll be hearing more about this over the next few years. There's a great deal of excitement about building what are referred to as large science foundation models that can be used for multiple tasks within and across scientific disciplines. And the goal is to build scientific foundation models in physics, in chemistry, and in biology, and to press them into service to help with synthesis of ideas and, for example, new compounds and candidates, as well as with helping with elucidate scientific insights. There's different architectures being proposed for how to build these multidimensional models. Some are using adapters and modular approaches to building separate models and then stringing them together, or holistically, all as one unified model. So I want to give you a compelling example now of some of this that really I found very exciting, given Microsoft's role in working with the Department of Energy's Pacific Northwest National Labs as a joint project, and with harnessing an AI-centric discovery pipeline. And so this was basically used, these methods, to generate a promising new electrolyte candidate for a battery that requires 70% less lithium than today's batteries, the standard lithium batteries. It's been a challenge for a number of years. People that are interested in the details of this work, I'll cover it briefly. So look at the technical paper that I list here, but it's in the Journal of American Chemical Society. The pipeline that was built employs several distinct phases of analysis here, several different kinds of AI models, coupled with traditional high-performance computing to first generate a list of 32 million possibilities for new electrolytes, looking at salt, ions combined with substrate. Then they actually use another model to narrow down the 32 million possibilities to 500,000 materials that are deemed to be stable. The first ones were not necessarily stable. Then they focus down further to a list of 18 promising candidates. And in the end, one solution was identified, then synthesized and tested, which was the hard part in terms of the actual experimentation and building the reagents and so on. So components of that discovery pipeline operated, we know now, comparatively, at speeds thousands of times faster than traditional methods. The team estimates that achieving the same result would have taken more than 20 years and cost nearly $2 billion to get to the same single result with standard methods. You can look at the approximations in that paper with the estimates. But with the power of this new workflow, it led to a breakthrough in just 80 hours, costing roughly $350,000. So the speed is believed to have been about 2,000 times faster for the end-to-end discovery and at less than 1% of the cost. Now think about this. This example is one data point in a world where it's illustrative of what we're poised to do in so many fields, this kind of speed up. Let's turn now to some examples of AI-powered discoveries in health and life sciences. So many of you have been following AlphaFold 2 and other examples, but in this area, we're seeing AI systems performing expert-level diagnosis, of course, predicting the structure of proteins from their sequences, predicting protein-protein interactions, which moves from structure to function. They're also providing new design tools for vaccines and therapies, such as the design that blocks the binding regions of viruses, making them, rendering them safe, sort of taking away their edge. So I see us making significant progress on grand challenges in the health and life sciences over the next decade. And this includes developing custom-tailored cancer therapies. I keep on telling my bioscience colleagues, I want to see most cancers become chronic diseases over 10 years and manage that way, like we do some of them now. Disrupting Alzheimer's disease and FTD, mitigating autoimmune disorders, prolonging the vibrancy of cells. There's chatter about a long-term challenge of actually harnessing multimodal AI models to build virtual cells that capture essence of cells that you can do high fidelity in silico simulations on. I spent time with some teams pursuing this vision and can report that the teams are armed with very concrete ideas on steps forward. I co-authored with a large set of authors. We thought a lot about different angles of this aspiration in the 50th anniversary of Cell Journal. This article is out now. I want to see some of our early 2024 semi-crazed ideas on possibilities going forward. So the advances are truly a sea change for biology and biomedicine. I resonate deeply with my colleague David Baker, who won the Nobel Prize this past year for protein design. All areas of computational and molecular biology will be transformed. The biophysicist at RPI, Titano Monteleone, says this is a real sea change for structural biology. It's impressive. I mean, a couple of examples here about AI providing new kinds of molecular microscopes. I view these as computational microscopes. The DeepMind team in London computed thousands of predicted structures. And this was in the news, so everyone knows this, but they covered over 98% of the human proteome, when prior to that work, only 70% of structures were known. On the left here what's less known is work looking at mutations and the effects of mutations on protein structure. This shows the structure of one of the proteins predicted by the London team, where the red circle highlights structural changes when a mutation is in a protein sequence that provides insights about how a mutation leads to a rare neurodegenerative disease named Wolfram syndrome. Now, on the right side here is work that I was very excited to collaborate with David Baker on, which at the University of Washington, which shows how we can come to understanding of the whole protein interactome, which is identifying all proteins that might interact with one another. In this case, it's yeast, but it's a very close eukaryotic cousin to the cells that we're comprised of. Many previously unknown interactions were identified through the AI pipeline. What I circle here, I love this particular example. I'm calling out with the magical label here, computed structure of core eukaryotic complexes with unknown functions. So we're predicting two proteins are interacting, and we can't figure out what they're doing just yet, or likely interacting, and it's casting light on some dark matter of biology. In another exciting area of effort, generative AI methods are leading to stunning results with designing new proteins that are designed to fold to specific target structures and function. These names of these methods are like RF diffusion from UW up north. Our team built EvoDiff. They're delivering stunning results with designing new proteins that are designed to fold to target structures. These design tools, believe it or not, employ very similar methods, if you look into the details, of noising and denoising that are used in image generation tools like DALL-E. In fact, those early tools, I can tell you, talking to biologists, were motivation. Can we do this for proteins? Can we use this diffusion idea to etch from a noised background interesting structures and condition them? What you see here is unconditional and conditional or filled-in noise sequences that are instructed to incorporate functional motifs of various kinds by saying, it's kind of like saying, it's like the text to a DALL-E system. Don't do me anything. Don't give me a random photo. I want to see a dog with in a forest. In this case, we're saying I want to see a protein that binds to this target. So also exciting are new biomedicine discovery pipelines that are really not so different than the material science pipeline I showed you just a few minutes ago. And these couldn't be more timely, this work on antibiotics in this case. This is the MIT team. So in recent years, there's been a rapid emergence of antibiotic-resistant bacteria, and this has been exacerbated by a lack of antibiotics that have fundamentally new mechanisms, because bacteria have evolved around the old ones, essentially. Global deaths due to resistant infections are projected to reach 10 million per year by 2050. So this frames the need for new kinds of antibiotics, and work over the years includes screening in the wet lab, kind of very slow methods. The AI methods that are being applied now are enabling drug discovery to be performed largely in silico to allow exploration of much larger spaces of chemicals. So in a pipeline, again, remarkably similar to the material science pipeline used to discover that new kind of battery electrolyte, scientists at MIT first trained a neural network model with a couple of thousand examples of molecules that showed antibacterial activity in the lab. So just a very small, kind of a smallish model they used, and they trained it up with new chemistries that showed some antibacterial activity. They then aimed that model at multiple gigantic chemical libraries and discovered a molecule they named halicin, believe it or not, in honor of Hal, the computer on 2001. Halicin is a structure that's quite distinct from conventional antibiotics, and you see it here. And it has antibacterial activity against a wide spectrum of pathogens, including TB, C. difficile, Abamani. And the research, interestingly, revealed when looking at the mechanisms that might be behind the power of this AI-discovered molecule is that it operates through an unconventional mechanism that actually interferes with the electrochemical transmembrane gradients. When I read this, I said, oh my God, they found an antibiotic agent that shorts out bacteria. It takes out this gradient. It's a very different mechanism, and therefore it's powerful against bacteria that have evolved against the classic ones. And a few months later, after that discovery, the same lab reported yet new discoveries with an antibiotic that can be used to kill methicillin-resistant S. aureus, Staph aureus. It's infamous MRSA. If you're from down at the hospital, you know about this bacteria. It's a very challenging infection. But this whole new method that was applied here was using spaces and visualizations to provide what the team built to call out explainable AI methods that gave some insights about the novel activity. What you see here is actually a space where they had agents that actually had bad side effects. They didn't have bad and that over here that were effective against bacteria, and in the middle there, trying to find something that would do have very few side effects for humans and be bad news for bacteria, was where they started picking candidates out to find that particular reagent. So I provided just a few examples in our short talk today from health and life science and material science. But the power and methods and excitement extends to other grand challenges here that I've listed a few of. I think that advances in core AI methods and pipelines being developed across these multiple disciplines and challenge problems will be will have great implications, and I'm deeply optimistic about the possibilities ahead. I wanted to say a few things about patterns of analysis and tools that we're gaining access to now. And that includes fast-paced evolution of some general AI tools for the sciences and new frameworks that you can shape and custom tailor in different scientific disciplines. So I mentioned before agentic methods. These can be used in many ways to support scientists with accelerating discovery, with performing tasks like literature review, hypothesis generation, experiment design, lab automation. They can also help identify open questions and propose new lines of inquiry, design and prioritize experiments, and in some cases, autonomously, with human oversight, run experiments through robotic platforms. Development environments and practices for building and coordinating systems are evolving pretty quickly. I should say that one platform we built at Microsoft called AutoGen and a templated version of it called Magentic One really are promising for the sciences. I just want to give an example of something that I built with some colleagues a while back on Magentic One, built on AutoGen, a general agentic framework. We call this the Biomedical Research Assistant. It's powered by 5 separate agents, including a bioscience research reviewer, a multimodal web surfer, a file surfer, an assistant, an executor, a medical reviewer, and so on. Let me show you how this all works. So the system basically is set up with multiple agents to collect and read relevant literature to a question that's posed to it, to assess the scientific rigor of each article that's discovered, to synthesize a report weighing the rigor of each paper. It includes an analysis of the clinical trials, the funding, and size of N equals X, to identify contradictions and disputes, and propose steps forward with experiments. So the system literally weighs the evidence, synthesizes reports, it calls out contradictions, and proposes new experiments. And it's really wonderful to just let the system out and run with a hard question like, well, what is today's understanding of the role of telomere length in cellular aging and senescence? So the system goes out to PubMed, to literature. It begins to pull down articles, assess rigor, and there's a whole report on each article for the rigor it's finding and why it thinks this article is weak, and let's not fold it in with too much weight. But it's just weighing these articles and bringing them together, builds a report to be read. It identifies contradictions and disputes. And finally, it actually proposes what to do next in the sciences. And more general, beyond bespoke pipelines and frameworks, there's a longer-term vision to have AI systems play the role of tools that can serve as an actual partner a collaborative partner in scientific reasoning that can complement and augment the scientists' reasoning themselves. A couple of years back, I joined with colleagues to write in this cover story in CACM about what it would mean to build cognitive agents for scientists, calling out many ways that systems might help someday bolster various aspects of cognition that would power human discovery. I'd like to refer you to this article because it really is much broader than the kinds of applications you hear about these days in terms of trying to get into the cognitive psychology of what it means to do science. And then I'm exploring some broad directions in this space for AI as a partner in scientific reasoning. I'd like to also refer you to some examples in the AI anthology. So right before GPT-4 went public, maybe a few months before, under NDA, I got access through OpenAI and Microsoft to pass GPT-4 as model to about 20 experts in different fields. And I just said, check this out. I mean, write an essay on what you think this means for humanity from the lens of your field. And I gave several examples. And some of the examples were on scientific discovery. And here's one of the examples that I used. I basically took, at the time, a late-breaking paper in Nature about the strange, surprising source of methane in the atmosphere in 2022. And you can ask questions like the following. What are the key weaknesses of the study? How can the work be strengthened? If we assume the author's hypothesis is incorrect, what else is going on? How might each hypothesis be studied? Did these authors overlook one or more important relevant modeling methodologies? I was happy to see that it pointed out they didn't use Bayesian reasoning methods that were widely available. And here's a link to those tools. There's much more, of course, in the interaction. You can get to this example online. So before ending today, in the next 5 to 6 minutes, I have to say, and this is all in the back of your minds, I'm sure, that beyond technical advances, we're going to have to attend to key socio-technical considerations so that we can nurture the creative and vibrant use of AI applications in the sciences. You can think through a number of important directions. For example, are scientists getting the right resources to compute, the right tools? Do they have the right skilling? Are they being trained through the undergraduate and graduate levels as to how to use these tools in the sciences? What about scientific integrity and responsibility? With integrity, last year I joined several other scientists in meetings hosted by the National Academies of Science and Engineering and Medicine about how generative AI could pose threats to scientific integrity for a set of challenges, including attribution of discovery, replicability of studies employing AI models, and so on, and came up with a set of principles and directions that we thought were important that were published in May of last year in PNAS called Protecting Scientific Integrity in an Age of Generative AI, looking at best practices for disclosure and attribution about use of models. How do you replicate models, science that uses the models? How do you verify AI-generated content? What should it not be used for in the sciences? How do you document and distinguish with provenance and metadata synthetic data being generated by AI systems from natural data as these data start to look alike quite a bit and can be mixed up? Ethics and equity, and monitoring, oversight, and engagement. And there's a discussion about creating a standing committee to ride the wave of AI and its implications for scientific integrity over decades. And again, I'm sure this is the back of many of your minds when you see powerful technologies in biosciences. It's going to be critically important to prioritize issues with safety and responsibility, taking proactive measures against the potential misuse of the rising powers of AI with careful efforts and considerations in areas like new powers of AI in biology that you might pose to biosecurity and so on. Last year, I helped to co-organize a workshop at the University of Washington with David Baker, Linda Stewart, and Francis Arnold. We brought together about 50 protein design biologists who were using AI for protein design from all across the world and came up with assessments and potential principles and statements, including leading to this editorial in Science Magazine. As part of that work and in advance, I did some work with a colleague at Microsoft as a demonstration that really became something much bigger. And I'll just want to just mention it now. We can talk about it in Q&A. But I asked the question of Bruce Whitman, the lead of my bioscience team, hey, can you use the best AI tools we have and take some toxic proteins, let's say ricin, for example, and have the AI pipeline rewrite the sequence, the amino acid sequence of that toxic protein, and have it optimize the heck out of things to hold the original structure. And we have measures that show which part of the thousands you can generate might be most likely to function. This led to discussions, and we found that we could get these proteins through traditional screening technologies that are used in the process of generating nucleic acids for protein manufacturing and generation, and led to an 18-month study where a cross-org team developed a patch to this vulnerability in our screening software to make it, we say now, AI resilient and distributed across the world. That topic and others, that project, were discussed at Asilomar in February at the 50th anniversary of the 1975 Asilomar meeting on recombinant DNA. For folks that don't know, the 75 meeting was one of the first times that bioscientists gathered to review safety challenges, responsibilities, and directions forward with safe measures for research that was leveraging newfound capabilities to modify cellular genetics. The powers of AI in biology was a key topic at the 50th anniversary meeting in February, and statements from the meeting will be forthcoming. So with that, let me just say that I'm optimistic. I'd like to give you that's a little bit of it. We have to, really consider dual-use challenges, the dual of the responsibility and opportunity ahead. But I nonetheless see a great deal of upside. It's going to be important to keep a steady and unwavering and intensive focus on the grand challenges while we address potential rough edges and downsides. And with that, I'm going to stop and just look at the foothills here of
There's the Stanford
Foothills.
dish, yeah.
And we can sort of get going on Q&A.
That's great. Awesome. Thank you. So we have some time for questions. Let me start. And so can you say something about the role of scientists in AI and how AI and scientists can work together? In particular, AI can come to insights very differently than the way humans think, and there may be billions or trillions of parameters and all sorts of things that are being discovered. And how important is it, or how does one go about communicating that to the humans that are involved so that they can sort of evaluate it? Or are we going to reach an era where AI is such a powerful black box that we just have to sort of trust it and look at the outcome?
I think a mix of the two. There's been a long-term research thread with multiple projects across sites on understanding and building systems that leverage detailed information and findings, and some from cognitive psychology, about the complementarity between the best AI systems of the day and the human mind. And that includes explainability, which can be very valuable at some level for enabling a coordination of initiative and a kind of a duel of deep involvement in the details. But I think that we, just like in chess right now, we might not know exactly how a top stockfish player may have come up with a move. We may have to just work with these systems. Now, on that latter example, there's great research going on right now, and I'll refer you to work happening in Toronto and also at Microsoft Research New York City on how do you take a stockfish-like black box and make it more educational, leverage the power of the AI to talk to humans in a way that's coherent and understandable as much as possible so the humans can give input and maybe even complement and help to have the system drive forward as a team.
Great. Yep. Chuck.
Hi, Chuck Easley from Stanford MS&E. Thanks for a really interesting talk. I'm worried about some of the organizational and funding implications of this. So,
What brings that to mind? Yeah.
So, for example,
Yeah.
I know biotechs that are doing similar things, and of course, they're
Yeah.
spending so much VC money developing these models, they want to keep them proprietary.
Yeah.
So, are we at risk of trading the open science framework for more of a proprietary science system where a few of the biggest players that have the best AI models and the biggest data pipelines then can dominate discovery?
You have a few answers to that, interrelated set of concepts. So I serve on a continuing advisory committee to the NIH director on AI, working group on AI. We've been meeting face to face. We've been hearing from institutes, the directors of all the institutes, about what they're doing in AI. And one direction that came to mind is, let's not replicate. Let's think about, do we need a foundation model X, and let's put a lot of compute into that if it can be generally used by other institutes, for example. And this was the same thing I spoke to Michael Kratsios about when I met with him in person a few weeks back. I said, hey, let's think about what we might do as a nation when it comes to building national resources that can be fine-tuned in different ways, but are really hard to build when it comes to the foundation model itself. Assuming that scale is going to continue to be very important in the sciences as it is, as you see in other areas. I think, and I'll just say this, for discussions at Microsoft that I've had, we're thinking, well, why are we competing? Let's find out, can we work together with other organizations, other companies, other nonprofits, and think about what needs to be done, and let's decide who computes what. So that might sound really nice as an answer. In reality, there are this IP and compete, and the Stanford Office of Technology Licensing, which I dealt with as a graduate student here when I did my first startup, with some technology that came out of our PhD work. So let's see how it all goes. But I think there is a move afoot, given how hard it is to do these large-scale projects, to come together in some way, for a federal approach as well as what the private sector might do, and together.
Other questions? Yeah. Does anyone else have a mic? Yeah, one's coming right behind you.
So maybe I'm going to say something really scary, but
I thought I already did this in about 10 minutes ago, didn't I? No?
What I was thinking of as I was listening was, here's the potential for massive bioweapons development.
Yeah.
So then on the other hand, I'm thinking, well, maybe we need to build infrastructure that will neuter that kind of thing. And by that, I mean, maybe we have to have infrastructure which creates vaccines and things like that in response to bioweapons and that kind of thing. So I just maybe
it's a great thought. So like minds, I mean, there's been thinking that maybe we can't stop everything and gate it at the level of production and filtering, that we have to be ready for both organic, natural pandemic threats, as well as potential malevolent activity, as well as also inadvertent releases from labs, for example. Doing more high bar projects that might be risky. One approach, and I've written about this with Linda Stewart, is to think about what it would mean to do more along the lines that you recommend. So, for example, there's something called the Civil Air Fleet Reserve, set up in 1950 or so, I think, during the Berlin crisis, where major airlines, I think United and Delta, American, are part of this agreement since that time, where they get some sort of benefit during peacetime, but during humanitarian crises or wartime, they have to be available to give certain percentages of their airplanes to the Department of Defense for transport. What would a biosecurity response reserve look like? How can we put that in place now, test it semi-annually, for example, make sure it all works, like who's doing the sequencing, who's making the vaccine, who's doing the surveillance to begin with, better surveillance. And so I think that you're exactly right. We need to do, to invest on both ends, the production end, regulations, oversight, as well as rapid response.
Another question over here.
Thank you. Hi, Eric. Thank you. Oh, okay. Yeah. Hi, Eric. Thank you so much for being here. I'm learning a lot. I'm Lydia Wang. I'm a fifth-year PhD student at the business school here at Stanford. Um, I guess I have a question about. So I read your National Security Committee on AI report, and there was something mentioned about like TEVV, like testing, evaluation,
Evaluation, validation.
verification, validation. I was wondering what you would say is the best way to tackle or improve the evaluation of the performance of AI models, um, including like improving methods to predict AI system behavior in different or new contexts, or ways to maybe adjust model parameters to improve predictability of AI model outputs.
Oh my gosh. Well, what you just said is like uh, defines and frames the whole industry now of methods across, across industry, what's happening with trying to understand and evaluate these methods. So some of the best work in the field is led by Percy Liang here in HAI in the Computer Science Department at Stanford. And we collaborate with Percy on projects and are very proud to, given the work on evaluation. There's the AI Index, which does a nice pool of what's happening by gathering and collecting various evaluations from across the world every year. How can we do that better? It's interesting. There are some trends and directions in this space. One is you look at problems that were really hard challenge problems like 2.5 years ago, and you recognize when they're saturated. Like every single model that's being built is getting like 97.3 or 98% correct on these. We need to go and do harder benchmarks. So these combinatorial benchmarks now in traveling salesman problem and optimization problems and planning problems are the latest approach to like understanding how to do evaluations. And then for your other comment, I mean, at Microsoft and other places, there's a rigorous end-to-end evaluation effort going on when it comes to principles like various kinds of notions of fairness and safety. We do red teaming, adversarial attacks, and try to make sure that these systems, through filtering queries and outputs, changing weights, inspecting, and doing mechanistic interpretability, as it's called, and changing models more precisely. A lot's going on in this space, so it's a really important question and important set of directions.
So we're about out of time, but there are a number of questions online as well. So let me take one of those. I'll take one that builds on that last one, and also your earlier paper, Sparks of AGI, and the benchmarks that were being saturated. So the question is, given the rapid improvements in AI reasoning and problem solving across the fields, where do you think we are in terms of crossing to true AGI? And maybe you should define that too.
I would love people to read the paper that I wrote with Stuart Russell, Joshua Bengio, and a few others. That was part of the. You can find, if you search on Future of AI Research from AAAI, it's a set of writings that came out, and I was assigned the AGI topic. I'm not sure why exactly, and so was Stuart. But I think AGI is poorly defined. Scientific calculators are already super intelligent, and we don't worry about them, of course, or superhuman. But of course, the definitions of AGI talk about doing everything economically valuable that a human could do, including hang out with your kids while you go out to a movie and so on. I'll just say that I prefer to look at. Well, first thing I'll say is AI as a field has always pursued this direction. The AGI as a term only was introduced in like around 2000, 2001, because people, some of whom were outside the mainstream, looked in, saw successes in narrow areas, even though AI researchers were trying to do general things and principles and so on. You saw the second line I showed about AI, to do all the things that humans can do. That was like 1956. We looked at the narrow applications that said, I don't think that's AI. I want general AI. And there's something interesting about that. I'll just say that I expect the AI capabilities to grow in multiple directions on a multidimensional surface over the years. And there'll be some interesting surprises ahead for the influence of these technologies on people in society based on these powers that I can't predict right now.
Well, so what's the year?
The year for X. I keep on saying I don't want to define a single thing, right? But I'm just saying that the powers are growing, capabilities are growing. Along with that, capabilities of explanation, human AI complementarity and coordination. And we have a lot of innovation that needs to happen in society and in industry to even mesh appropriately and well with these technologies that will make for interesting times over decades to come.
Okay, good answer. Thanks so much. That was an amazing seminar.
Thank you.
And both inspiring and scary at times, just like the times we live in. So next week, Monday, May 5th, we're going to have David Otter coming over from MIT, and he's going to be talking. The title of his talk is, Does Automation Replace Experts or Augment Expertise? The answer is yes. And so the whole title actually has the answer in it as well as the question. So come to see why he gets that conclusion right here Monday, May 5th. See you then.